Hi, friends. Welcome to the Carpenter Shop. Today, we're sitting down with a Cuppa Joe with our special guest, Scott Smith. So we'll jump right into it. So Scott, please tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your favorite coffee? And tell us about all the books that you've written. And by the way, which one is your wife Sarah's favorite?
Awesome. All right. Good questions. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Love being in the carpenter shop. That's awesome. So a little bit about myself. I'm father of five from Louisiana, and I'm a Catholic author. Also an attorney. So, I have to do really well on the Catholic side to make up for my other vocation. But yeah, there is a way to bring the incarnation into the legal field. There's a lot of people that do need help. So that's a little bit about myself. My favorite type of coffee. I do like the Black Rifle Coffee Company, but my favorite coffee company is actually a Louisiana-based company. My family used to own a coffee company, and just so happened my great grandfather died, and his brother was a gambler, so we lost the company. They sold. We were almost the biggest coffee. We were the biggest coffee company in Louisiana.
Wow.
After we went down, then community coffee started getting big, but there is still a remnant sort of our family coffee company, and that is River Road Coffees. So
Wow.
they provide free coffee to this might lead into one of the other questions, but they provide free coffee for the Catholic Men's Conference that I host.
Oh, that's
So
perfect.
yeah, and
So you have a little bit of a coffee pedigree there, I see.
well, it's not fancy coffees, but
Well, just like the spirit of Saint Joseph, I doubt that he would have drank fancy coffee. He probably drank more common average Joe coffee.
that's right. Yeah, these are coffees for a simple man, but it's a Catholic man.
Very good, very good. And of all your books that you've written, Scott, which one happens to be your wife's favorite?
Oh yeah, good question. So if we redefine the verb there, which of my favorite books I've published, I did recently do I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but
Yeah, hold it up a little
re
bit closer and we can see it.
that's it's just looks like I've been replaced by Saint Teresa of Lisieux.
Yeah,
But I don't know if you could tell. It's a story of a soul reprint, and she just read it recently for the first time, and so that's a favorite one I've published. But Lord of the
can
Rings
you,
and the
Scott,
Eucharist.
can you hold it up again? Because
Sure.
if you go a little bit to your left or right, you can see it better. A little bit more of that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
now
there
the
we go.
perfect right there. Okay, so
Yeah,
it's a story of a soul, the autobiography of Saint Teresa of Lisieux.
yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
nice. So how long did it take you to write that?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of it's just story of a soul, but I added, she has a lot of photographs. We
Uh-huh.
have a lot of photographs that her sister took of her, and one where she's a saint cosplaying another saint, where she's Joan of Arc. Got that in here somewhere. But I also made study guides, to go with it,
That's
and
awesome.
probably,
So yeah,
probably,
I mean, obviously her autobiography part's hers, but then you filled in the gaps and put in the study guide.
yeah, I don't know if you can see
Cool.
that, but that's Therese as Joan of Arc.
Very nice. And she's known as the little flower, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's a beautiful life. And then, but my wife's that I've written is Lord of the Rings and the Eucharist. That would be the favorite, the one that she's actually read. I've written some pro-life horror novels,
Mhm.
and she won't read those.
Wow. Well, that's so you've got quite a wide ranging uh, list of books there. I see you delve into different topics, and that's one of my upcoming questions. So before I kind of steal the thunder of my next few questions here, let me jump into question number two, which is basically, I'm excited to learn more about your, what I would call your emangelization apostolates that you run to help men be good men like Saint Joseph. So can you please fill us in more and tell us more about these apostolates and ministries that you're involved with?
Sure. I think the one, because I'm also like the Grand Knight for our local Knights of Columbus Council, and we just did Exodus 90. But the one that's kind of uniquely something that I helped start is Men of the Immaculata, not to be confused with the Militia Immaculata, which I'm also part of because St. Colby's awesome.
Yes.
But we host, we host here in the Diocese of Baton Rouge, and really for the whole Gulf Coast, a annual Catholic Men's Conference, and that's where I first got to know Father Calloway, for uh, which we'll talk more about later. But it's about 1,000 guys. We have great Catholic speakers come in. We have benediction and mass. Chef John Foles, which is kind of a famous guy around my parts. He's kind of an internationally celebrated chef. So he'll cook lunch for all the guys. And but
That makes sense if
the
you're in Baton Rouge.
right,
Some gumbo going on there. I can kind of
yeah,
taste the sauce.
there's usually like a jambalaya or some kind of some roux based food. But yeah, we eat well.
That's good.
Yeah, but I mean, it's mostly just to give the men a mountaintop experience so they can take that back into their parishes, their families,
Mhm.
fortify them.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
what would be the motto of Men of the Immaculata?
Well, each year we have a different theme. Like one of the last years was St. Joseph, and each of the
Oh, wow.
speakers were a different epithet for
Mhm.
St. Joseph. Like we had Father, one of our local priests, Father Ruben Dykes, who was on the LSU football team at one point. He spoke on terror of demons, and we had Dr. Alan Hunt. I think he was protector of the church. So we usually have a theme every year, and we'll
Well, you
get one of
mentioned,
our local. What's that?
I'm sorry. You mentioned one of the years you had Saint Joseph as the theme. Um, can you touch on that? And do you remember what some things that were said, or even in your own words, how can Saint Joseph help us, particularly in these times, as a man?
Oh yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, for Saint Joseph to help us be better patriarchs of our family, um, better leaders in prayer and service in our parish communities. Um, I think we need to all get consecrated to Saint Joseph to do Father Calloway's consecration to Jesus through Saint Joseph, and you know, if and maybe the best preparation for consecration of Saint Joseph is a consecration to Jesus through Mary. So if you are consecrated to both Mary and Joseph, I mean, I think the whole world needs that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so right. I think it's kind of like, in my simple mind, it's kind of like having training wheels on both sides, the left and the
Yes.
right. Not
Yeah.
just the left side with, Our Lady, but also you got the right side. Um, I was hiking one day in Hong Kong, which is pretty popular pastime. They have hiking trails everywhere, but they're so nice. They're actually even, many of them are paved, and they even sometimes have like handrails. And I was going up this really steep mountain, and on the right side there's this handrail that was green. So I thought, it kind of made me think of St. Joseph. I always think of him with green, right? And I was like, yeah, St. Joseph's kind of like a handrail to kind of hold on to, right? And then as I got closer to this Trappist monastery out in the mountains of Hong Kong, it's
Wow.
really beautiful. You can see this ancient Trappist monastery. You got the ocean, you got the mountains, and there's a bridge that goes across the river over to the monastery, and there's a handrail there as well, and that one's blue. So I thought,
Oh,
it kind of gave me this idea, like, yeah, you got the handrail on the left, blue, one on the right, which is green. That way you can kind of help you stay on the narrow path to Jesus, which is the whole goal, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of that's better for Joseph and Mary, but Don Bosco's image of the two pillars.
Yes, I've seen that. I
And
know exactly what you're talking about.
the ship, which is the church, is tied to those two pillars, and all the little ships around are tied to the main ship. Whether it's other our brothers and sisters outside of the church. Yeah, but to keep
Yeah,
them safe, the two pillars.
that's true. Very, very good analogy. Yeah, between the two pillars of Jesus and the Eucharist, and then Our Lady.
Mm.
So yeah. So now maybe in our modern Saint Joseph era, we could add like a third pillar, or I don't know how that analogy would play out. Uh, but yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Scott,
Yeah,
on my next question here, in your blog, which I'd
right.
like you to tell people about, in your blog, there's an in-depth article titled, "Was Saint Joseph Old or Young?" The Bible tells us Saint Joseph's exact age. So that was the full title of the article, and I'll say it again in case people didn't hear me well, because I probably didn't say it very well. So the whole title is, "Was Saint Joseph Old or Young?" The Bible tells us Saint Joseph's exact age. So that really caught my attention. And since you're a lawyer and an engineer, and I think your dual qualification there really shines through in your research. So could you please argue the case for us as you solve this problem?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, maybe I sensationalized the title a little bit, that the Bible tells us the exact age range of Saint Joseph. So what you do is, if you looking at the first chapter of Luke, there's two uses of the word man in Luke. And it's important because it's all in the same chapter. Um, so if you happen to have your Bible handy, you can look this up with me. We've got Luke 1:18. That's where Zechariah, his age is stated, more or less. It says, "How shall I know this? For I'm an old man, and my wife is advanced in years." Okay, and the Greek word there for old man is presbytes. And then if you go on a little bit further at Luke 1, verses 26 through 27, you've got, we start describing Mary and Joseph. And so in verse 27, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph. And the Greek word used for man there is andri. Okay, so there's two different words used for man within the space of a single chapter of Luke. Well, that's nice. It might give us a differential, might be able to compare the two ages, but it doesn't give us anything exact. Well, that's where Dr. Petrie comes in. Dr. Brant Petrie did a awesome Bible study. All his stuff is just top notch. I was fortunate enough to be his student. Most of my classes to get my master's, at least all the scripture classes, I had Dr. Petrie. So I'm very grateful. We'll always be grateful for that. But anyway, he did this Bible study on St. Joseph, the Hidden King. And in there, and Father Calloway read this and was super excited about what he found. What Dr. Petrie found was in Philo of Alexandria's writings, right? Philo was a church father. In his writings, he has a rubric. He lists out a rubric of Greek words that correspond to certain age ranges, like Greek words for man that correspond to different age ranges of man, each 7-year age range. So, and in the blog, I went and searched for, after hearing Dr. Petrie's talk, I searched for this writing from Philo. And in the blog, I kind of charted it out. So you have infant, child, boy, youth, and then 3 groups of 7 for man, just plain man, then middle-aged man and old man. Okay, so Andri, the word used for man, is the fifth through seventh sevens. Okay, so 5 times 7. Let's see. Yeah, it's the age ranges, those three groups of 7, 28 through 49. Okay, so the fifth 7 that starts right after 28 and all the way through 7 times 7, 49. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
The 7.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, that is
So
all right.
that's the age range for Joseph is 28 to 49. And then just to kind of tie that together, Zechariah at old man, at presbytes, is 56 plus.
Okay, so I was taking notes as you said that, and I think that's really exciting, this new discovery, which is so cool about when you read the Bible, each time it's a living, it's alive. So it's every time you read it, you can get something new out of it. And I love how you put that. So basically, if just to recap, you said in Luke 1:18, Zechariah is described as an old man. And for the Greek there, which I hope I don't butcher, is presbytus. And then you said in Luke 1:27, Luke is later describing Joseph in a very close sequence, that he's called just a man, which you said the Greek was Andre or Andri.
Right.
And then Dr. Brant Petrie and is it a book or a video, The Hidden King?
It's an audio recording.
An audio recording. Okay, so people can get that. And there he cites Philo of Alexandria, who gives the rubric of the 7 phases of life, which every time I think about this, the 7 ages of life, going back to maybe as early as Hippocrates, the famous father of medicine, right? But I think also, Shakespeare talks about it too, like, the ages of man. But for me, my favorite one in this topic comes from a man named Richard J. Needham. And he said, the 7 ages of man are spills, drills, thrills, bills, ills, pills, and wills. So probably you'd get a kick out of that as a lawyer, particularly.
Yeah, I'm an estate planning lawyer.
There you go. There you go. I love to collect quotes, and a while ago I wrote a book on quotes where I combine aviation and Christian spirituality. And some people collect different things when they travel, and I'm the guy that sees something on a billboard or in a napkin and I write it down. And after a while, I had enough quotes to kind of publish a book, kind of like a flight plan. And that's where I came across with those 7 ages of man. But what you've discovered is so cool because it gets into that, from a biblical context. And would you, in your opinion, say that this settles the debate? Because as Christians, from what I've looked at, it seems like most Catholic Christians think that Joseph is young, at least if you go back from the time of St. Jerome. So in the West, and then also Protestant Christians as well. So in the West, it seems like it's usually a younger to normal age Joseph, whereas in the East, like with the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and also the Greek Catholics, like Byzantine, usually you'll see images of an older white-haired Joseph.
Right.
So in your opinion, and you mentioned you have a master's, by the way. So tell us what the master's is in. So in your opinion, does this settle the debate?
I think it does. There is one step further that I think seals the deal, because you have the 3 different, when we're talking about proving philosophically, theologically, that it's not quite standards and burdens of proof like I would deal with as an attorney. It's possible, plausible, demonstrable. And I'd say that this, especially what I'm about to say next, takes it to the level of demonstrable from scripture. And so Dr. Petrie is the one that discovered this. My addition, my little contribution to this is when I wrote this article, I got some pushback. The pushback being, well, why would Luke know what Philo's writing? Like, why are those 2 intrinsically connected? There's nothing that is, if you just present it like that, there's no reason that Luke should be as precise in his writing as to exactly follow Philo of Alexandria's rubric. And so I dug in, because that's, point counterpoint. That's what we do as attorneys. And what was so interesting, what was even startling, was when I found the text from Philo of Alexandria, I realized this isn't Philo saying this. Philo is quoting somebody, and you kind of alluded to it before, but Philo is quoting Hippocrates, right? The Greek father of medicine, right? The world's father of medicine. So if you were a Greek trained physician, for example, medicine 101 would have been studying the writings of Hippocrates, right? The Hippocratic oath.
And we know Luke was a doctor, Dr. Luke.
Exactly. Luke just happens, this is Luke's gospel, and Luke just happens to be a Greek trained physician.
Right.
So for me, that is an intrinsic connection. And I take it even a step further to see what other, where we're just looking for normal, plain meaning terminology, where else Luke might be using medical terminology. And so I make a joke that St. Luke at the beginning of his gospel said he would try to present an orderly account.
Yes.
Right? Like orderly, like a hospital orderly, right?
Right. Very nice.
Yeah. So where else? So when we read and study Luke from now on, we need to have an eye towards what might be a Greek medical term.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
so
he's going to be writing from his culture, Greek, and his background and profession. So like, when you write, I imagine some of your background profession comes through, just like when Luke wrote, being a doctor, he's going to give more precise terms. Like you said, the Andre, which I've also, by the way, I've seen it, aner, because I saw an online YouTube video of Dr. Brant Petrie, and there he's using the word aner, but I guess aner and Andre is the same in Greek.
I really don't know. I don't know. I'd
Greek
like
to me. And then
it's
so
all
basically
Greek.
Andre or aner for man, which you said is in that what age range did you say that is?
So that's the 5th through 7th years of 7. So 28 right after 28 and up to 30 to 49. So 28 to 35 to 35 to 42, 42 to 49.
Okay, so somewhere between 28 to 49.
Right.
Okay, so as early as 28, as old as 49. So you cut that in half, take an average. I remember reading one of the mystics, or maybe a couple of the mystics said that they thought that Joseph was 33 when he married Mary.
That's
and that
my
would
opinion.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's my opinion. Yeah, you have mystics, you have some church fathers agree on that, because it's it's not only the age of Jesus and the ripeness, the fullness of manhood, it's the age of Isaac as well.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Because so if we look at the Hebrew words for man, we have, and I think you even might have sent me something on this, but I didn't get a chance to look at. But I have another article about the sacrifice of Isaac, because modernists try to say Isaac was a boy, just a young boy. So that means that the Bible condones child sacrifice, which is ridiculous, right? The modernists say some crazy things about Abraham and Isaac, but anyway, so the word in Genesis, when they're at when they're about to travel 3 days to the top of Mount, I almost said Ararat. Now I'm blanking. Not Horeb. Here, maybe we can. Actually, let me just pull up that blog article too.
And by the way, I wanted to ask you for our viewers, and I put it down in the comments, or excuse me, in the description later, but can you tell us how could people get a hold of your blog to read this article? Was St. Joseph old or young?
Sure. Yeah. So it's the scottsmithblog.com. That's the scottsmithblog.com, because there's a lot of Scott Smith out there. So
Yeah, and on top of that, I see that you're actually Scott Smith Jr., correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even my own family, there's I'm always going to be the other Scott Smith. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, he'll come to me eventually. But when they're climbing the mountain, which also happens to be Jerusalem, which is its own awesome typology. It's Genesis 22:5. If you want to open your Bibles, and Abraham says to he says to his two servants that were with him, they're referred to as his young men. Stay here with the ass. I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. So that in Hebrew, the words, because he doesn't refer to his servants as for the Hebrew word for servant. He refers to them with the same word he uses for lad to refer to Isaac. And that word is na'ar, N-A''A'-R. So that tells you something right there. And then you can also look at just the definition of na'ar. And it's there again, it's right in that age range of the 30s. So, and I mean, there's other clues there as well, that he carried the wood of his sacrifice. Isaac carried the wood of his sacrifice, not Abraham. Mm-hmm. But the whole point of that, besides the cool connection with Joseph and Jesus at 33, is that Isaac is a willing sacrifice. That Abraham, if Isaac's that age, Abraham's well over 100 at this point. And a man in the fullness, the ripeness of his manhood could clearly overpower Abraham. So when he's tied up, when he's tied up and about to be sacrificed, it's because he willingly submitted himself to sacrifice and in obedience to his father. So informs the crucifixion, right? Christ's sacrifice. And it just happens to be at the same location.
Yeah, there's so many, types and shadows there, of what's to come and fulfilled with Jesus and Joseph. So yeah, so Abraham and Isaac foreshadowing Joseph and Jesus. Now, I guess some people say, well, yeah, but Joseph didn't sacrifice Jesus. Well, no, but he raised Jesus, taught him here in this carpenter's shop, and prepared him to be able to lay down his life for us at age 33. So I think, and Joseph, I've heard it said that he's like the new father Abraham, because as Abraham was father in faith in the old covenant, therefore Joseph would be the father in faith in the new covenant. So God restoring everything perfectly, as Hebrews says, this is a better and more perfect covenant than the old. So that, I think that's beautiful. And I'm really excited that, it only took some 2,000 years for us to figure out, hey, look, if you look at these words, it kind of tells you an age range of the person. Just like in English, we might say, oh, how are you doing today, young man? You wouldn't say that. Yeah, or lad. I'm in a group that's a dad and lads club. So right there, if the lad is probably not going to have gray hair. So yeah. All right. Well, very good. Well, Scott.
So some follow-ups from that. Mount Moriah. That was the name of the mountain I forgot. The typical depiction of Joseph is more like a second Abraham. He's that old. Like he even in some tabulations, he's over 100, like Abraham was. But just to go on the evidence, right? Our evidence, the Eastern Church's evidence for Joseph being old, comes from the Proto-Evangelium of St. James, which is, not even deuterocanonical.
Yeah.
It's not in the canon at all.
It was even condemned by a couple of popes.
And if only because it forms a substantive part of not our canon, but the Muslim canon.
Yeah.
That's why Muslims have such a extreme high esteem for the Blessed Mother, is because they incorporate the proto evangelium of St. James into the Quran, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, and there are some, Islam unfortunately got some things about Christianity from some of the Gnostic sects of Christianity in the early days, around the 6th century or whatever, that, or in the 600s anyway, that I think one of Muhammad's wives was a Christian, and her uncle, I think, was like a some kind of Gnostic type of Christian. And because of that,
If
that's
he'd
why
just
he had
been
some
a
of those
better
ideas.
Christian, if he'd just been a
Yeah,
good Christian, Muhammad might have become, a saint.
this is interesting. This a whole other topic, very interesting, and it's really interesting how one little thing, like we might have a difference of opinion on this, and if you go like this, eventually, you're going farther and farther apart. Like if one person takes a step to the right, in 2,000 years, look how far apart we've gotten. And this could be one example of the East from the West in Christianity, whereas the East basically thinks that Joseph was like a 80, 90, even 100-year-old old widower man who had a previous wife and previous children before Mary and Jesus, which, as you do in your profession, putting all the puzzle pieces together of all the evidential pieces, it just doesn't fit together very well that he's a carpenter working in this carpenter shop at 90 years old.
Old men don't walk into Egypt, like Mother Angelica says.
Exactly. And of course, Abraham, he was old. Moses maybe old later when he was, but yes, but also they're, walking and not when they're starting marriage, so, this is, they're saying that Joseph started at, 90. I don't know. It's what I found interesting when I did the research on this also, that the earliest writings like Saint Jerome, Saint Justin Martyr, they all talk about a younger virgin Joseph. So for me, it's more important than the age. Like, okay, we can agree on the white hair. I mean, I could even say, yeah, okay, I'll go with white hair Joseph because white represents wisdom, right?
Or when he saw the angel in his dreams, maybe white hair.
Exactly. And well, that's an interesting thing, because when you bring up the dreams, in the Bible, I think in 2 places, like in Acts, it says that your old men will dream dreams, which that means normally old men don't dream dreams. So then I thought, well, let me research this. Let's see what some knowledges say. So I looked it up, and sleep doctors tell us that you dream most of your dreams and have REM through a certain age range. And once you pass 60, you have less dreams. So I thought, so that's
Jews are
interesting.
sharp.
And Joseph was dreaming all the time. I mean, how many times did he have an angel appear to him in a dream? And
it's some rapid eye movement going on.
Yeah. So, that's also quite interesting. So, well, so your blog is thescottsmithblog.com, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I apologize for the long address.
No
but
worries.
Yeah, if you Google was St. Joseph old or young, it's it'll be one of the first ones that will pop up, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a great, and I think that's how you and I met. I read your article and it was fantastic, and I sent you an email. So thank you so much for putting that together. It's very well written. I encourage everyone to please go check out Scott's excellent article on this. And this brings us to question number 4, which is our penultimate or second to last question. So you've published an anthology entitled Lord of the Rings and the Eucharist, which you held up earlier, which is based on Tolkien's famous work. So my question is, which character in the Lord of the Rings and also in your anthology would you say that best matches Saint Joseph?
It depends on what attribute, we're thinking of with Saint Joseph. I think the obvious choice would be somebody like an Aragorn. A young man. He looks young, but he's also like 85, right? Because he rode to battle with Theoden's father, but because he protects the little ones. I think that would be an obvious choice. If we were going for an old Saint Joseph, maybe we'd pick Gandalf instead. But Gandalf is so divine. Aragorn is more rustic and not. At least from he's a hidden king.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't he the hidden king?
Yeah, like we were just talking about Dr. Petrie's study about Joseph is the hidden king, that he looks destitute, he looks poor, he looks even smelly, Aragorn does, but he is the king of all men, right? The Dunedain, this ancient lineage of kings descended from Numenor, so that is very much a Saint Joseph figure, and if you listen to Dr. Petrie, the lineage from David to Joseph, it wasn't just like every descendant of David could have been the king. There's a very specific characteristics of Joseph's line that made him uniquely qualified to be crowned king. And you even have Herod burning all the genealogical records. This is history. This is extra biblical history that like Josephus and other historians write about. Herod burning the genealogical records that were kept in the temple, because the Jews were very good at keeping genealogical records, and you could see which lines would have been most likely to be king. So with Lord of the Rings, so I basically what I do with this book is, let's see if I can get in there, is take that first breadcrumb that Tolkien himself gives us, that the lembus bread is the Eucharist. And from there, you've got the Eucharist / lembus traces back to a manna, like a prefigurement of the Eucharist, the manna and the Exodus. The elves have a great journey. Like the lembus bread comes from the elves' Exodus, and the recipe was given to them by God, by one of their gods, to make the Eucharist. And then the leaves trace back to Tolkien's Eden and the two trees in his Eden. But then it goes forward as well through a genealogy of the trees and the kings of Numenor and then Gondor, that Tolkien presents a northern and southern kingdom of men, right? And they were unified. They were a unified kingdom of men until this man who had slayed a dragon, this man who had slayed a giant, right? Like King David and Goliath, Isildur picked up his father's sword and slew Sauron. But he kept the ring. So that was like his great sin, not unlike Bathsheba. And a couple of generations later, the kingdom of men splits into northern and southern kingdoms, Arnor and Gondor, just like northern and southern kingdoms of Israel. So it's just, and Isildur is prophesied, his descendant will become king again one day. And in the same way, the son of David is prophesied to be king, and that's Joseph. So, I mean, it's just, it's remarkable.
That is so cool. I think any fan of Lord of the Rings will want to get your book. Can you hold that up for us again?
Yeah, sure.
Did earlier.
If I make a green screen kind of.
There it is. Yeah. Lord of the Rings and the Eucharist by Scott Smith. It looks fantastic.
And this, if you don't want to read it, it's an audiobook. Now, Kevin O'Brien from EWTN, he does some dramatizations as Tolkien. So he reads the book, the audiobook version, which is awesome. Yeah.
So he reads it as Tolkien. Now, how?
Yeah, the quotes from Tolkien, he'll read as Tolkien. Yeah.
So how can friends get a hold of your book if they want? Is it on Amazon, your website, or what's the easiest way?
Yeah, both. You can find it on the website. I've got on the About Me page of the website, I've got a bibliography.
Okay.
But yeah, you can also find it on Amazon. I think on one of the side menus on the website, I've got like a picture of it and a link to it.
Okay. Well, Scott, leading up to our fifth and final question, as you're here about to spill the coffee beans, can you hold up your coffee cup? You have a really cool coffee cup that I saw earlier. Put it right there. So it says Catholic Nerds Podcast. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So um my friends and I, I kind of we were all involved in youth group together, and we kind of grew to different cities, but we wanted to keep talking, hanging out, nerding out on Catholic things. So we started a podcast, the Catholic Nerds, where we nerd out on Catholic things.
That's cool.
We try to uh, appropriate the culture. So we'll go over a lot of Marvel and comics and all that kind of stuff, DC. But we also do deep dives into St. Joseph and the Shroud of Turin, Star of Bethlehem, just all the nerd things. No nerd topic is off limits.
So what would be, we'll put it in the description below later. What's the link for that if people want to go to the Catholic Nerd Show?
If you Google Catholic Nerds Podcast,
Okay.
it'll come up number one. Or if you put in Spotify or iTunes Catholic Nerds Podcast, it'll pop right up.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, it'll kind of segue into my spill the beans, the coffee beans in this case. So the final question, and we won't hold people in suspense anymore, is please tell us about the new book you're working on with Father Calloway about St. Joseph.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and announce on your show the due out in mid-June is basically the sequel to the Consecration of St. Joseph. Father Calloway and I have written together the Consecration of St. Joseph for children and families.
Nice.
And it's
Wow.
illustrated, and it connects all those, in Father Calloway's Consecration of St. Joseph, each of the days is a different epithet of St. Joseph.
Right.
Like protector of the church, patron of families, most chaste, most going through all the virtues, most humble, and all those. And we connect them to, we use a lot of the same quotes from the saints that Father Calloway does, but we connect them to movies and classic children's stories. Like if you've ever done the Marian consecration for children, it's similar in structure to that.
Wow.
So like Finding Nemo, we connected to Finding Nemo, that a father is going to the ends of the earth to protect his son, to find and protect his son, Lion King, there's all these great stories of fathers. When typically when a child picks up a movie these days, even Disney movies, the dads tend to be buffoons.
Yeah.
But that, so we lift up those stories that tell of a St. Joseph like father. But go into Narnia and all the classic children's literature. Willy Wonka.
That is
Talk about
exciting. That's fantastic. So did I hear you correctly? You said that this new book, which is a sequel on Father Calloway's Consecration, is first announced here in our little humble carpenter shop of Cuppa Joe.
That's right. Yeah, it hasn't really been formally announced anywhere else. So yeah.
Wow. Well, that is a huge honor for us. We're humbled by that. I would think that it would be announced somewhere else a bit bigger than our little humble carpenter shop, but that's just the way of St. Joseph, right?
That's just how he rolls.
Humble way. So I'm really honored that that's the case. And can you tell us again, the title of it is going to be what?
Sure, it's going to be the Consecration of Saint Joseph for Children and Families.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. I hope it's just as big a blockbuster as his first book, Consecration to Saint Joseph, the Wonders of Our Spiritual Father.
Right.
And I only heard good things about it, except the only negative thing I ever heard from a couple of friends was, wow, that's a big book. You know, it was a lot for me to read each day. So I think that not just kids, but some of us big kids will also like the sequel, because the only thing, which for me, you know, I like you like to nerd out sometimes. So I loved it, but I know that some people, maybe the average Joe, would like a more condensed version that's more appropriate for kids, or at least those who think that they're trying to be young at heart, right? And I love what
Right.
it sounds like in, you're putting it in an enculturated cinematographic. Is that, I'm trying to coin a new
Yeah.
word here
Yeah.
on the
That
fly. So you're kind of bringing in
Phantasmagorical.
culture of our movies, which everyone can relate to. Like you said, you know, not just Lord of the Rings, but you know, Lion King and Finding Nemo. That was beautiful. Incorporating into going from what we know to what we don't know yet, the building block of learning. So that is fantastic. So when do you think that this book will be out and available?
It should be out mid-June, and we were also putting together like a calendar, kind of like an advent calendar for it, so that you can have a sticker for each day, you know, as you go along the 30. It's a typical 33-day kind of St. Louis de Montfort consecration pattern. But yeah, we hope that um the full-blown consecration of St. Joseph that rocked the world in the year of St. Joseph with Father Calloway. I mean, it sold almost 2 million copies, translated into 18 different languages. They translated into Ukrainian, like just before the war broke out,
Wow. That's
and
huge.
Arabic. I mean, it was just huge that what that book was able to do. But I think for some people, uh, especially, or at least in America, it may be too much of a feast, too much of a banquet. The food might be too rich. So
Yeah.
this might be a good starter food, simple foods that, because you want the father, and the context of this is a mother and father teaching it, doing the consecration with their family and their kids, you know, around the dinner table, and you want the parents to feel conversant and comfortable with the material, because we've kind of lost a couple of generations of catechesis, so we kind of have to um, start with simple foods.
That's great. So this is kind of like a Happy Meal book with some chicken nugget sized bites for children to learn about Saint Joseph, their spiritual father.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm with it. That sounds awesome. I'm so excited to hear about this here for the first time. That's so funny. So, well, thank you very much, Scott. It's been just an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Um, are there any parting words you'd like to share? Anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
Well, I really appreciate you putting this together and inviting me. I'm glad we could become friends through St. Joseph and reading the blog. And I wish that your show, you know, God's blessings on your show.
Thank
And let's just pray that St. Joseph will intercede for our world, um, for our children. And I hope that, you know, 20 years from now, or maybe 15 years from now, after this consecration comes out, maybe we'll just see this influx of vocations that are rooted in St. Joseph, you know, rooted in love of St. Joseph and the Holy Family.
Amen. That's awesome. Amen. Well, I definitely hope so. And it's been a pleasure meeting you for the first time here on Cuppa Joe. So best wishes on all that you do. You've done a lot. I mean, so I never got to hear, besides just being a lawyer and engineer, you said you have a master's degree. Is it in theology, or what is it in?
It is, yeah. Yeah, I got to study under Dr. Petrie here at Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans.
Wow.
And oh, and One more book that y'all might like, especially on the Catholic nerds theme, is kind of another one I put out more or less recently, the Theology of Sci-Fi.
Wow.
All the theological components of Dune and Star Wars, Matrix, Foundation series, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I like to do. Like, our culture is so saturated in non-Christian things. I like to give connect the dots with where all these great stories are coming from, is that they also ultimately always point to Christ.
That is, can you hold that book up again? The
Yeah, sure.
Theology of Sci-Fi. That makes me think right away, of course, of Star Wars,
Yeah,
which I,
that's
even
the
me,
Empire's.
yeah,
Yeah.
even someone, as dull as me, I noticed the analogies between, Luke, I'm your father, feel the force, I was like, I wonder if there's some Christian connotations here, kind of like C.S. Lewis with, the Narnicles or the Chronicles of Narnia.
Mhm.
So can you give us just a thumbnail sketch on that book, The Theology of Sci-Fi, and what do you delve into specifically and also generally?
Let's see if I can do the thumbnail. So there's so much in sci-fi. For a Star Wars, one of the things that should jump off the movie screen to a Star Wars fan is that Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, was a virgin birth. Shmi was,
I don't know if I knew that. I remember that.
yeah, isn't that crazy? Like that's revealed in the first movie, episode 1, not episode 4. So for Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, Apple TV, I think, recently put out a series on that. That is, Asimov was reading The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire when he wrote it. So the foundation, this like institute put together as the Galactic Empire is crumbling, is based on the church. Like, the church is the foundation is established in that book series to ward off 1,000 years or like 10,000 years of barbarism. And so the church, by being a repository for Greek learning and, from Greeks to Aquinas, prevented a continuation of the Dark Ages forever and ever. So there's that. We talk about, let's see, the Matrix. There's, a lot, even though the Matrix is mostly a Gnostic influenced movie, there's constant biblical references in it. Dune, Paul Atreides, the Kwisatz Haderach, is a Messiah. Like, he's described as a Messiah. So there's a Messiah of a desert planet, whose father is a king, but he's lost his throne. There's a Marian character, a Joseph character. The Jews are the Fremen that are being controlled by the Romans. It's just all this. It's not just me making connections. It's
Right. Yeah.
the authors themselves acknowledging these things. I would talk about the theology of Superman. If I were to say a baby being put into a raft and pushed out among the stars, and then discover, crash landing on Earth and being found by some, like a simple farmer, like a carpenter.
But I think
You might,
also they couldn't have children, right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's almost
Wow.
like a virginal kind of thing. But the creators of Superman were this Art Spiegelman, or I forget their two names. I might have said the wrong name, but they were Jews. And Lex Luthor was meant to be like an anti-Nazi or a Nazi kind of symbol, but Superman is very much like Moses, and Christ is very much like Moses. So you have all kinds of
Types of
biblical
shadows.
references.
That's so cool. Wow. I
Yeah.
think people want to get that book as well. So I think we could probably go on. If I made the mistake of asking you if you wrote any other books or have any other,
Yeah.
the show might extend for another hour. So I encourage everyone, please go to thescottsmithblog.com. Learn more about Scott there, his wonderful articles on his blog, as well as his books. And I assume soon you'll have some news on there about the new Father Calloway book that you're working with him on, the Consecration to St. Joseph for children and families.
That's
So,
right.
well, thank you so much, Scott. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And as always, I want to remind everyone to go to Joseph.
Nice.
Peace.
Ite ad Joseph.
Amen.